Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Shan. Please subscribe if you'd like to see more. There are loads of helpful videos on this channel. I'm sure you'll find something that you like. I have for you my what I read in May, and there were 7 books. 7 books! Now this is probably quite normal to some of you, but to me this is like, wow, my goodness, 7 books. It's a lot of books. I'm going to crack on and show you the first one, which is Harlan Coben's Missing You. Now this was given to me by one of the mums at school. We have kind of like a little bit of a book swap thing going on, and she said she thought I would enjoy it, and she wasn't wrong. This book is about an NYPD detective whose father died when she was younger. He was a cop as well, so she's sort of following in his footsteps. She's working with people he used to work with. She basically becomes embroiled in a huge discovery, totally by accident. Basically, this huge group of criminals are using internet dating as a ruse to get money from people. And I don't want to give away too much, but it is a really scary and really interesting idea of how kind of a plot could come out and of how a plot could work. And the storyline is kind of totally believable, even though it's a bit scary that it is believable. And I just really enjoyed it. It didn't take me too long to read. It was one that flowed really easily. Character was really likable, but she obviously was troubled from things in her past, so you kind of wonder if she's taking some things too far. But it's a really, really good book. The second book I read this month is called The Great Alone by Kristen Hanna, and for once I haven't got the book because I borrowed a library book. This was the Bookish Mamas Book Club read for May, and it's a brand new book and is only in hardback and was really quite expensive on Amazon, so I ordered it from the library. It's the first time I've ever done it and it worked, so you know, yeah, I'll do that again. The Great Alone is about a young girl called Lenora, but she's known as Lenny, and she has her mum Cora and her dad Ernst. And Cora and Ernst's story is a story of love, but a story of an extreme form of love, I guess. A love that doesn't see flaws, basically. And Ernst was a prisoner of war in Vietnam, and he has all kinds of post-traumatic stress issues. He very much takes his anger out on his family, and the story follows their move from the US up to Alaska, which is obviously very, very cold, and how they adapt as a family, and especially Lenny, who is 13 when they move, and how much Lenny falls in love with the place, even though it is a brutal, harsh reality. There are bears, there are things that will eat you, people die falling into like lakes that are frozen. It's a harsh environment, and there's not many people who survive there without being really, really prepared for it. And the family moves there totally unprepared for living there. They have no idea what it's going to be like, no idea of the implications of living there. Lenny goes to school in the local village, and she kind of falls in love with a boy called Matthew who is the same age as her. And so there are these different stories of love, of this kind of poisonous love that Cora and Ernst, Lenny's parents, have. This kind of like all-consuming, ragey, not being able to escape because you love them so much. Then Lenny and Matthew's kind of very pure, very real, in a way that kind of teenage love is like totally full on. And obviously that was once what Cora and Ernst had too. Anyway, I'm rambling. It is an incredible story. I stayed up 2 nights in a row till like midnight, 1 AM because I had to finish it. I couldn't not know what happened to the characters, so I just kept reading, and it was really that kind of all-consuming book. It was a really, really clever book. It read really well. The characters are amazing. You want to know what's happening next, and you've got this kind of whole element of literally the elements in Alaska, which adds an extra dimension of kind of suspense to the story. It's just an absolutely brilliant book, and I would definitely urge you to go and read it. Get it out the library if you can't afford it. The third book I read is called Genuine Fraud by E. Lockhart. I was a bit skeptical about reading a book by E. Lockhart again after The Fly, which, if you'll remember my review, was possibly the worst book I've ever read in my whole life. And I don't say that quite lightly, I really hated it. So this book I picked up with a level of trepidation because I was just unsure as to whether or not I was actually going to enjoy it, but I was pleasantly surprised. This book is about a girl called Imogen and a girl called Jewel, and how these characters intertwine with each other and kind of become each other. I'm not going to give away too much. It's a story of deception, of murder, of guilt. It is really clever book, and I really quite enjoyed how the book flowed. It made me giggle when I got to the end of the book and I kind of realised the chapters had been going backwards, because I hadn't realised that throughout the book. So the chapters went backwards and then it kind of came back into the real day. And it is a really good story, and I will definitely now read another E. Lockhart book again, because I was a bit unsure after Fly on the Wall. The fourth book I read this month is called Boy Meets Hamster by Birdie Milano, and look, I got an uncorrected proof copy, so I feel like I've actually made it now. I've been sent a proof copy of a book, so woohoo! This book was such a light-hearted read, but it has such a deep, strong message. It's a book about a boy who is 14 years old, and he's called Dylan, and he goes on holiday with his family and his best friend Kayla to Starcross Sands holiday park. One of those holiday parks where I know probably most of us have visited on like a Sun £9.50 holiday. His mum revels in doing the Sun £9.50 holidays, which I like to do too. This is a young adult fiction book, and Dylan, the main character, is gay and hasn't yet told his mum and dad. So it's kind of a coming out book, but it's also a very important message to give to our children, I think. I feel like I haven't ever read a book that had a gay character as a main person and also a young gay character as a main character. So I think it's actually a really important book to read, because I think that message needs to be heard a lot more by children, because being gay isn't obviously anything that's abnormal, and all children, whether gay or straight, should know that it's not abnormal. And I guess it's kind of normalizing that into everyday conversation, which we should all be doing anyway, because nobody should have this kind of like phobia around them or misunderstanding about things. So I thought it was an incredibly clever book, which is very important, and I do think most children should read it. It does say for age 11 plus, and I would argue that maybe it's a tiny bit older than that. I really enjoyed it. It was a really nice, light-hearted read, but with a really serious, good message inside it too. The fifth book I read is called The Girl You Left Behind by Jojo Moyes. I haven't read any Jojo Moyes books yet, and I think I might well be like on my own in this, but this was another one given to me by a mum friend from school, and she said she absolutely loved it and she hadn't loved previous Jojo Moyes books. The initial story is set in 1916 with an artist called Edouard Lefebvre, and he has left his wife Sophie to go and fight in the war, as most men at that time did. Sophie is left running their kind of hotel in kind of like the hub of the village, basically. When their village, their town, becomes occupied by the Germans, the hotel that Sophie is running becomes kind of like the main place where the German soldiers come to eat their dinner, and the commander in charge of the German troops falls in love with Sophie a bit. He falls in love mainly with a picture of her, and the picture is of her just looking her most beautiful and free and quite sexual, and he falls in love with this painting. And it's a story of love, and this whole first part of the story I absolutely adored. I found it totally believable. It was quite a harsh environment. People obviously had no money then, no food, very little food, and it was about the kind of lengths that people would go to get out of their situation or to find someone they love. And in the second part of this story, the portrait of Sophie is given to Liv by her then husband, who then dies quite young, and it turns out that the painting is wanted because the family of Edouard, the original family, believe it's theirs, so they kind of try and claim this painting back. And it's all about the kind of what happens with trying to get the painting back, whether Sophie will go to court with it or not, and it's a complicated kind of legal proceeding in the second part of the story. I preferred the first part of the story, if I'm being honest, but I loved that the first part of the story kind of intertwined with the second part of the story, and I did really enjoy the book. The 6th book I read this month is called The Girl Before by J.P. Delaney, and I found this one a bit hard to get into initially. It's about 2 main female characters, one called Jane, who is in the present, and one called Emma, who is in the past because she died. And it kind of follows the tales of both of these girls. They've both lived in the same house, they've both kind of been in love with the same man or infatuated with the same man, but they're very different characters. So each chapter goes between the 2 girls. So you've got a Jane chapter, an Emma chapter, Jane chapter, Emma chapter. And initially I found that kind of quite difficult to kind of connect with the characters because you're being constantly broken up between the 2 characters. But it did kind of make sense. I enjoyed this book. It wasn't one that I would read again. It had a plot twist I didn't see coming. I didn't guess who killed Emma, which I like it when I haven't guessed what has happened. So I did enjoy parts of this book, but like I said, I wouldn't read it again. It was just a bit flat, I guess, if that's the nicest way of saying it. Sorry. The 7th and final book I read this month is called Hold Back the Stars by Katie Kahn. This is a love story set in the future, and it's a really nice love story. It kind of flips, again, another book that flips between the present and the past. The story starts with 2 astronauts in space stuck with a limited amount of oxygen until it runs out, and no way of anyone being able to rescue them. And the next chapter goes back and kind of tells you how they met, their story, how they came to be flying around in space alone with no one to help them. It's a really nice story. One thing I didn't particularly enjoy were the different endings, and that will make sense when you read it. I would rather just have one. Just one that sticks rather than different ones. I don't know, it just didn't kind of sit quite right with me, but I really enjoyed the prose of the story. I enjoyed the concept. I liked the idea of this vision of the future, of us kind of living in different areas, in kind of like different ships, and it's all very interesting. It's a really interesting concept, so I really loved that side of it, but I just couldn't quite get into the different endings. And that is it. All 7 books that I read in May. I'm really chuffed with that, and it's only the 4th of June and I've already read 1 book this month and started on another. Whoop whoop. Maybe it's something about the sunshine coming out that means I get more chance to read, I don't know. But the children have definitely let me read more. Maybe that's just because I've kind of just sat there reading whilst they've watched TV or something. I just really wanted to read this month, and this month has been so busy with the B&B, so I really needed some places to escape, and for me reading is the best escape, because you go into a completely different world and you can escape there for as long or as short as you like until the book runs out. Let me know what you're reading at the moment. I really love hearing different books and having different recommendations. If you want to see any that I've got lined up to read this summer, then have a look here at my summer to be read. Thank you very much for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, give us a thumbs up. If you'd like to subscribe, then please do. And if you do subscribe, please make sure you click on the bell to get a notification when I upload a video. I will see you again soon. All right, bye.